Lovers, friends, family, we're here with my brother the way, Dr. Dan Engle, back again. And it's cool because, we didn't see each other for like 5-6 months. And that's just kind of the way it goes. Both of us off fighting in our own channels, doing our own thing. And then you come back and you share the spoils of victory. You show the scars of battles lost and won. And then we, get back together and replan how to, serve the mission even better.
Yes, indeed. Para el bien de todos.
That's it.
It's always good to be back, brother.
Yeah.
I love dropping back in because it's like no time's passed.
Right.
It's just like when we go into ceremony, right? The medicine just picks us up right where we left off.
Right.
Could be days, weeks, months, years. Yeah. It's always good to be back
Continuous.
home. Yeah. Definitely.
So let's talk about some of the stuff because, people have been keeping up with what I've been doing, but they may not have been keeping up with what you've been doing. And you've been up to some pretty interesting shit, really exploring and going deep on the potential for the use of psychedelics as medicine. And that's a topic that we've talked about, but it seems like now it's potentially coming to fruition in a way that was almost like a dream a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're in the midst of a renaissance in consciousness. How that's manifesting now more formally, particularly in realms of the scientific research, is that we're seeing a resurgence of psychedelic or entheogenic, I use those terms interchangeably, the psychedelic research in the medical mainstream. And it's pushing this specific renaissance in the field of psychiatry. So psychiatry is my background, and spent a lot of time in a lot of different training modalities, residency, a couple of fellowships. And then when I got out, I was like, I don't know that I really want to practice this way. And so at that time, psychiatry, this was like, geez, I'm dating myself now, but like 10 years ago, when I first got out of my formal training. And back then, there was very little on the map for psychedelic research. You had these organizations like Rick Doblin with MAPS, who was holding the light. Just really talk about somebody staying consistent in the mission in the midst of persecution, ridicule, going up against a major medical industry, but just still just chipping away, a little bit at a time. And now what that looks like is we're seeing, so when pharmaceuticals are studied, they go through trials. You have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And so phase 1 trials are the small trials, and then if there's legitimacy, if it takes hold, then you get funding for phase 2, and then phase 3, and after phase 3, those are the bigger double-blind placebo-controlled trials. After that, it's usually prescription ready if you've crossed you've gone through all the hurdles.
File the new drug application, and off you go.
Off you go. So now we got psilocybin and MDMA going into phase 3 trials right now, which means they're likely to be prescription ready in the next 6 years or so.
As you're tracking this, there's a designation that the FDA can do called fast tracking, which means it gets a quicker review. And it seems with the data that's coming out, I mean, on the PTSD front, I think the latest statistic from the last trial was 84% cure rate with MDMA-assisted PTSD. The palliative care, end-of-life care with psilocybin, off the charts successful. Is there any chance that the FDA is going to fast track these trials? Probably not.
Probably not, because you don't have big money bankrolling that fast track.
Right.
And in fact, if anything, from the medical pharmaceutical industry, you might have some hesitation, some resistance.
This knocks out a lot of classes of potential treatment drugs.
Totally.
I've been talking to a lot of soldiers, if we're just talking about the PTSD front, and a lot of them get prescribed upwards of 10 medications.
Yeah, it's crazy.
10 medications.
Right.
All with different counterindications and all. It's just this soup that they're putting in their body, like this 10-spice pharmaceutical soup.
Yeah, it's crazy business.
Yeah.
And it is a business. And just like any business, they're going to look at the bottom line and they're going to try and push it. There was just this real big backlash from one of the latest vaccines, and the medical industry and the medical researchers that were checking it out. The editor-in-chief for the New England Journal of Medicine just came out saying that she has very little faith in the pharmaceutical industry because of how they skew the data.
Whoa.
That's big for somebody at that level to come out that publicly against the way that the pharmaceutical industry and the medical industry try and, through their own perspective lens, show a positive benefit when there really is none, and that's all corporate driven, that's all profit driven. And so you've got this huge thing that's called publication bias. And Ben Greenfield, no, we just talked to Ben Greenfield. Ben Goldacre, an English psychiatrist, did a really good TED Talk about 2 years ago on publication bias. And he looked at there was a span of 10 years where 12 different antidepressants were petitioned to the FDA for approval. And there was something like 72 trials in that 10 years for those 12 different medicines or pharmaceuticals. And of those studies, something like 36 of them were positive studies and 32 of them were negative studies, which essentially at the end of the day showed that I was like half and half. Half of them showed there were benefit, half of them showed there were not benefit. And in that, though, 35 out of the 36, and it might be more like 36 out of the 37, plus or minus, but like 97% of the positive studies were published in the medical journals, and only 3%, no, it was only 3 studies and only 7% of the negative ones were published in the medical journal. So if I'm your average doc, where do I go to get my latest research? From the medical journals. If I am not looking at and privy to all the information that the FDA has,
which nobody is,
right? Unless you have access to that information, then I'm myself biased by the publicized research. So I am promoting something that I might not even willingly or recognizably appreciate doesn't have any benefit. So if you're promoting something that's why a lot of the docs are pissed off. It's projected something like 25% of docs are going to opt out of their practices in the next 3 years.
Wow.
A quarter of the docs in all disciplines across the country.
Well, they're not being given access to the tools that they need to make real.
So they're super frustrated.
Yeah.
And so from my perspective, most of the docs I trained with are good, well-meaning guys. We just wanted to make a good, and if you wanted to make money doing, there's a lot of other ways to make relatively easy money than being a doc. So most of it's altruistic intention, and their mispromotion of the available therapeutic interventions is mostly out of ignorance. It's not necessarily out of malice. They just don't have the data. So you've got this whole publication bias. You have this whole fast tracking of vaccines and certain drugs to market because there's a major profit margin.
Yeah.
And the whole resurgence of psychedelic research is really shining a super beautiful light in the fact that these traditional medicines are extraordinarily good for many of the areas that psychiatry is really crappy at. Like you mentioned, PTSD, end-of-life transition, addiction, treatment-resistant depression, treatment-resistant anxiety. Addiction and PTSD, I think, are the really big ones. And so when you look at, particularly with veterans, you have a huge opportunity to serve well a very underserved client population. Kids, essentially, young kids going out and fighting wars for reasons that they're not totally even sure why they're there, come back, and they're placed on pharmaceuticals with standard cognitive behavioral therapy at maybe like a 20% success rate versus something like, psilocybin, MDMA, ibogaine, ayahuasca. All these things right now are being actively researched for PTSD.
It's just a crazy world we're in where it's like you say, all right, doctors, here you go. Here's what you got. You got to do surgery, and we have scalpels, but we got to leave those in the drawer. So I'm going to give you a butter knife and you got some rocks that you can make some flint out of, if you want to. And the doctor's looking like, what the fuck? You want me to heal? You want me to do surgery with a butter knife and some flint? Give me the good stuff. I know you got scalpels back there. And that's what we're finding. It's just these things, these tools that can be amazingly helpful have been outlawed. And it's not just the tools themselves. I think it should be mentioned that it's, MDMA treatment with psychiatrists and psychologists that really know how to drive that experience further. Because it's not like a soldier can just pop a Molly and go to the club and all of a sudden PTSD is over. It's not like these some magic bullet, take some shrooms at a fucking concert and like, woohoo, I'm not addicted to anything anymore. Like it just allows the practitioners, you need someone wielding the scalpel. You need someone to be able to use these tools to get inside, to break behind the walls, to actually access that consciousness body of the person. And that's what these things are. They're bridges, they're chakarunas, as they're called.
Totally. And we're seeing the slow movement towards the active and above board training of medicine positive trauma therapists to be available to do this kind of work. Because right now in the States, the only way that work is available is through organizations and clinical settings where you have trained professionals under the guise of a formal study. There's a huge underground movement, and there has been for a long time. And your data's right on. It's like 83% cure rate for chronic severe PTSD after 2 to 3 psychedelic assisted psychotherapy sessions, specifically with MDMA. 83% PTSD gone after 2 to 3 sessions. Right. And so how does that compare to the kind of the average allopathic or Western model now? Well, that's going to be pharmaceuticals. It's going to be group therapy. And it's going to be some individual cognitive-based therapy. And that's maybe 20% success rate, depending on the numbers you look at and where you're looking at.
Right.
So you've just significant. That's if you went from 20% plus or minus to 83%, it's a 400-fold increase.
And it's amazing that this isn't being fast tracked by the government and the FDA and everybody, because we're having somewhere upwards of 30 soldiers a day committing suicide.
A day.
And I actually read an interesting article on that, and a lot of people just say, that's straight up PTSD that's causing this. And the article was saying that a lot of these people, when you're actually looking at the medical records, a lot of them are the ones that are on these 10, 12, pharmaceutical pill a day kind of regimens. And that's just kind of crossing a lot of wires on a level
many.
Because they don't, when you do these clinical trials, you don't test the effect of doing all 10 against placebo,
No.
You just test one, and then you kind of make some guesstimates about any kind of cross indications, but those aren't like hard rules in that thing, except in rare cases, like you're not going to take an MAOI with another SSRI or something. There's like some hard rules, but other than that, it's like, yeah, he'll live if we do this. But what the fuck's happening there? You're affecting like multiple different chemicals within the brain, and the interplay and the understanding of how that's working is not at a level that's sufficient to be able to just prescribe that many.
Yeah, it becomes this toxic soup.
Right.
And then the prescribers don't really know what else to do, because maybe they're not getting trained in alternative modalities, or they have a particular dogma, or maybe they just don't have fucking time. Your average doc spends about 12 minutes with a client. And the average length of time when you sit down to talk with your doc before your doc interrupts you, 11 seconds. So you barely have enough time to say hi before your doc has already got an idea in his mind of what direction to go. And you're not going to talk about like, what are the lifestyle issues that are contributing? How you feeling about this? Like, what's your story?
Yeah, right.
Like, how are you? Not what are your symptoms, not if we've checked off all the boxes, not what your dose is, blah, blah, blah. All these things that are super freaking important. It's like you're on the battlefield. Those docs are on the battlefield, in and out. Instead of wielding scalpels, they're trying to wield their prescription pen. And it's a broken system. And so you got docs opting out. You've got clients that are looking more and more for alternative therapies. And that's what's pushing the industry.
Yeah,
It's the good data, and it's frustration on the consumer's part. So the consumer-driven movement is one towards integrative medicine.
Yeah.
Because the pharmaceutical industry, they don't have any benefit really in the big grand scheme of things to bring other guys to the table.
Yeah.
They're the big guy on the block. So, but when we know, and this is when it becomes really cool alchemy, when we know, and I'm not saying that pharmaceuticals are all bad.
Sure.
I did that for a while. I bastardized them. I was like, you fuckers. Like, even when I was septic in the jungle, I was like, I'm not going to use antibiotics. Like, what would I have done 100 years ago? So I tried all these freaking modalities, and I got sicker and sicker, but I was convinced I could find something. And eventually I came on to colloidal silver. and massive doses internally and topically, because I had this pretty raging infection that got bad and septic eventually, so the colloidal silver knocked it out. Not everybody's going to want to do that, and I understand that antibiotics have their place. And when we've corrected everything, particularly if people have bipolar mood disorder and schizophrenia, when we've corrected so many other factors, sometimes there's a really good benefit from using a fraction of a pharmaceutical. It just seems to tie everything together.
Right.
So to say that one field of medicine is bad is that same kind of thing that Western medicine has been trying to do to chiropractic and naturopathic and homeopathic and Eastern medicines for a long time. Everything has its sacred role, and when we know how to use each of them well together, then we start creating high alchemy.
They're all just tools.
Tools.
It's just about the skill in implementing these tools. Like people should be grateful that all the pharmaceuticals that are out there exist. That's an interesting tool, and there will be a time and place for most of them. Some of them maybe not, but most of them there's going to be, as you said, like dial this in at this level, so that's awesome. But the skill in using everything else, particularly when it comes to the brain, I think people are always undervaluing the belief system involved in that process as well. They're treating these they're treating it like in this weird abstract sense, instead of really realizing how much the mindset of an individual has to play on the actual chemistry of the whole situation.
Huge. That's probably the single biggest factor.
Yeah.
Is our mindset. Because when we really start to look at the data through quantum mechanics, non-local healing, these really phenomenal, what would look like what Einstein called voodoo phenomena, when we really start looking at the subtle implications. Spooky phenomena, right. When we start to look at these really amazing, subtle, but powerful energetic phenomena, we really start to appreciate, even in the lab, right? When you're looking at great data, like, for example, Lynn McTaggart's work in a book called The Field. She studied all this, and she's a massive researcher. So if you want like the data, then go to look at that. About the power of the mind and our ability to visualize our own improvement, to access greater, deeper, larger states of consciousness, to bring healing into multiple modalities, and to use a variety of supportive therapies that help us get into those states. And that's one of the things I like really about the psychedelic experience, is that it is a new trajectory. It's a new mindset.
Right.
So coming back to Einstein, he said that we can't solve the problem using the same mindset or consciousness that got us there in the first place. So we need this big wake up. And the psychedelic experience, particularly when held well, which is not like psilocybin at a rave or MDMA popping, with your friends just to get off. It's like, okay, using these really powerful psychedelic or mind-expanding avenues in the right set and setting to expand our consciousness, but also to heal these fractured souls.
Right.
All of this is really about disconnection from who we are, who we're meant to be, our friends and family, conscious communities, like we've talked about before, living in the tribe, living our most free, expansive, inspired life. When we're in that state, everything else is secondary. Even if you have chronic pain, when you talk to people who have chronic pain for a long time, those that get well, like Viktor Frankl said, it's all about attitude. The last of the great human freedoms is our ability to choose our attitude in any set of circumstances. So even people with chronic pain, when you talk to the people that have been able to successfully navigate it, eventually the pain becomes secondary to life as opposed to primary, right? So I'm still going to live my life even though this thing is happening. So whatever that looks like, that is our ultimate power. At our deepest core is the ability to choose our faith, to choose our mindset, to reclaim our indomitably buoyant spirit that recognizes this monkey suit is just a transient day experience in my whole life of the soul. And I walked in, I got this monkey suit on this time around, and I'm going to cash it in and see what happens next time, at the end of the day.
Right.
It really boils down to that. It's simple. We get attached because we love and we bond and we have these egos that like to be fulfilled.
We get attached, but then we also almost hate our monkey suit to a certain degree. Like I've tracked that a lot. There's like this attachment, like we don't want it to go, but we don't really fully love it either. We're always comparing it. We're always judging it. We're always telling it that it's not up to standards, or it's not good enough, or we're like, we have a really abusive relationship with this. But then, a recent ceremony that I had allowed me to really flip that, in that it showed me that everything that comes into creation inherently contains its own death with it. Like nothing can be created without its inevitable disassemblement back into chaos and death. So we're basically walking memorials of ourselves. Everything that exists is a walking memorial. We're living our own funeral now. And that feeling you get when someone dies and you haven't got to really say what you wanted, and like we can have that now to ourselves, to everybody around us, because we're all dead. I'm dead, you're dead, Raba's dead, everybody here in this office is dead. On it is dead. Like at some point it will die, like because it's been created. It's just part of the necessary duality of that creation, and then back to disassemblement to parts. Like it's inherent in that. And so while you're there, having that wisdom to really celebrate it like the funeral is now. Like it's happening every single moment.
Today is a good day to die.
Today is a good day to die. Like to live that fully.
Whew.
That's some powerful medicine.
Freedom.
Yeah.
Ultimately. And we have such this crazy disconnected association in our modern day culture in the West with death.
Oh yeah, that's insanity.
Right?
Yeah.
There's something like 75 to 80% of all the healthcare dollars are spent in the last 6 to 8 months of life. Just grok that. I mean, like people in the ICU hooked up to all this bullshit, trying to squeeze out another 6 months. But is that quality life versus just sailing out in the middle of the ocean with your friends and saying, man,
bringing a bunch of mushrooms, bringing some
right?
LSD, bringing some MDMA, and figuring out I'm going out one way or another, fucking fired up.
And I am stoked to do it, man.
Or, fuck it. If you really want to celebrate the meat suit, maybe it's not all these psychedelics. Maybe it's blowing Viagra. And you just go out hard. Just hard as a rock with a big smile on your face. Maybe that's how you want to do it. Whatever your thing is. I'm not going to impose on you.
Right.
But like make it a moment.
Yeah.
Make it a moment.
And your moment. Whatever's authentic to you.
Yeah.
I don't know what's right. You don't know what's right. You know what's right for you.
Right.
I know what's right for me. I'm getting more and more clear all the time what's right for me because I'm getting more authentic. Right? You use the word a lot, which I really appreciate, which is impeccability. And that's like that's an honest inventory. That's deep personal integrity to living our most authentic life, whatever that is. And some of the people that have been so inspiring are the biggest assholes in my environment because they're just so raw. They're just so who they are. And also, there was a really good friend of mine that had a bad traumatic brain injury, and it really shifted his personality. And right now, he's one of the more funny guys I know because he's just automatic. There's no filter. He just says what's on his mind. So it's kind of like, what was that, Liar Liar? With Jim Carrey, like he's on the he's on the elevator and he looks down and he sees this girl's blouse and he's like, "Whoa, what's happening there?" It's like
you can't.
There's very very little social cues and norms now, but it's so refreshing because he's just so authentic. And I'm growing to appreciate that more and more. And you're kind of, as a physician in some ways, taught to be inauthentic. Particularly because when you don't know shit, and part of the training is to act like you know shit. Like when you're when you're a medical student and you just start getting pimped by your teaching physicians, you start to develop this kind of style where you just make up shit on the fly, because you don't want to look like a jackass in front of everybody that you're getting pimped.
Maintaining that presence of authority and
versus just being real, like, I really don't know.
Now, is there something, speaking of this, like, is there some precautions that physicians take without even knowing it, or some who are good consciously take to not kind of take on the people's energy that they're kind of dealing with, because that would be one of the challenging parts of people in any kind of first line care situation, is like making sure that you're not absorbing all of that pain and suffering and anguish that you're releasing from these different people. You know, it's kind of like the stripper that won't kiss because she's afraid that, you know, that something will get in a little deeper, you know.
Right.
And maybe some of this physician's austerity is a little bit of that shield.
Yeah. I've trained one of my absolutely best mentors died in his mid-60s from leukemia, and he and I had a really good conversation pretty shortly before he passed. And I asked him that same question. I said, because he was so present always, and you could feel his presence. He was completely locked onto you, and he was that way with everybody. And when you're that locked on and you're that intuitive and present, then you get really skillful at being able to read the energy and understand more directly. Kind of like the maestros and the maestras in the midst of ceremony. They're very present with the energetic dynamic that's happening. Now, they're also very good at clearing the field afterwards.
Sure.
Right? So that's going to look like sage and other medicines and tobacco and the icaros that they sing to clear their own field. If you're not doing that, then you're going to continue to accumulate stuff over time. And I asked him that question. I said, do you think that part of the leukemia that you're going through, because he ate really healthy, he was super strong as an ox, his generational line, they all lived long, and all of a sudden he just got this thing, and it was like, wow, something's happening. And I asked him, I said, do you think it's because you've accumulated some of the energy of your clients? And he was a chiropractor, so he was always in their space and in their like intimate physical field, adjusting them. And he said, yeah, probably. I probably took on stuff along the way, but I wouldn't change it. I still just really feel the depth of his service.
Yeah.
And his desire and willingness to be so absolutely rock fucking solid for his clients. And people came out of his room healed. And that doesn't mean they didn't come back. They would consistently come back to see him because you always felt good in his presence. And he was so willing to be there on the front line for those that he was serving. That altruistic intention was so dynamic and powerful. And do I think there were probably things that he could have done to continue to clear his field? Yes. And maybe it was his time. We don't really have any idea. You know, you were talking about like our death is here now. I think you're fucking right on with that. I mean, when you look at, and this really depends on too, kind of where your spiritual and philosophical beliefs are as far as things being predestined. We're under the energetic cosmological influences of the larger grid. When we go through craziness that stretches long periods of time, oftentimes that's like planetarily related. And I'm not like, yes, I did live in Sedona, so I've got like a bit of a woo-woo flair, totally. That's the metaphysical capital of the country. And there's something to be said for understanding how the cosmic dust of the grand plan and the grand scape affects our daily life, our daily consciousness and moving forward. So who's to say that it's not in some way kind of expected that because of these influences, I'm more predisposed to dying in my early 40s. You could call that genetics, you could call that spiritual, you could call that cosmic, you could call that a whole lot of things. I think we're just scratching the surface on what we really understand is all the influences that factor into this human monkey suit.
Well, I think one thing that everything in my tracking and experience has shown is that I agree with you that there may be winds and breezes and currents that might want to push you some way, but we always have the choice to swim against any current.
It's always free will too.
You know, there's always free will. Like you can take away everything else in the universe, strip away everything, this, identity, blah, blah, blah. Free will is one of those forces that is at the very
last
core
of the great
foundation.
Human freedom, right?
Yeah.
Ability to choose.
And so I think it's good to be aware of where the tides are swimming, but not to say, oh, well, this is just what was supposed to happen because of fucking Mars and Mercury. It's like bullshit. Like, yeah, all right, maybe you got a headwind now, Doesn't mean you stop the journey. Doesn't mean you fucking lay down in the snow and let the cold overtake you until it feels warm again and you fucking quit. Like, no time for that, motherfucker. The fight's still on.
Totally.
Let's go.
So we don't become passive participants in this game of life. We're not in the passenger seat with somebody else driving the car. We're in the driver's seat, right? Maybe at times we pick up new guides along the way, teachers along the way. They've got the map. They're helping us. They're like our co-pilot, right? But we sit across the table from spirit and co-create our life every given moment. So that ability to choose your mindset, I think at the end of the day, that's more important than all these treatment modalities and practices and supplements and all the different kind of things that we try and rely on.
There was just a 600-person study that I read about, and I don't have it here right with me, but it showed that mindset was the number one most reliable indicator of longevity. Period. Not smoking, not drinking, not health, not exercise, nothing. Mindset. Now, obviously, if you're living better in accord with those things, you're probably going to have a better mindset. But ultimately, it was mindset. Even the people who did those things, like George Burns, smoking a cigar at 101, his mindset was strong. His mindset was really strong. And that's what you can track that through, and see that those are the people that live the longest. And that's what the science is showing.
Yeah.
The mind is the primary driver for many of these things. And that's, again, going back to psychedelics, why it's such a powerful modality. It taps you into the greatest part of your mind. You can call that spirit, you can call that consciousness, you can call that, but whatever it is, it's the best part of your mind. And it's the clearest, it sees the clearest, it's the most loving, it's the most empathic, it's the best part of you. And psychedelics are the way to get you into that state.
Yeah, consistently, the most effective, efficient, and safe way to have a significant rewrite and upgrade in your consciousness. And oftentimes it'll show, this is another thing I appreciated that you were sharing in the Float conference. I saw that talk you gave. And you and I hadn't talked about this, but the way you languaged it at that time, I appreciated, which is oftentimes in the midst of the psychedelic experience, we see our potential and where we're going. We still get to do the work. And so what's all the integration? What's all the necessary life choices, the mindset to actualize that end point? So we see where we're going, and then we reverse engineer it, commit to the process, gather our support. And so now we have kind of a target, like if we're sailing a ship, we know where we're going. And yes, we're going to veer left and right. We don't ever go completely straight. And when we get off target a little bit, we come back the other way, and we come back the other way. And that becomes this dance, right? Like bamboo swaying. And if you're extraordinarily rigid, then you break. But if you've got that ability to kind of go with the flow and bend, then we have the opportunity to be a little more free, a little less rigid, a little bit more kind of inspired, a little bit more willing to share. There's less of that lack mentality, like everything's mine, I got to hold on to it. And be like, man, just let us be in the flow, to recognize that the more I get attached to things, the more caged I feel, the more locked down I feel, the less energized and more stagnant my consciousness is. I love that study. I'd love to see the data on that.
Yeah, I'll get that to you. We need to get some show notes, Raba. We need to get some show notes.
Show notes.
Yeah, that's what real podcasts do. We have good conversations, but we're gonna be a real podcast. We're gonna grow up.
Upgrades.
We're gonna grow up.
Always opportunity.
We're gonna have show notes. So I say,
upgrades.
We'll put that in the show notes. I've always wanted to say that.
Dig it.
We'll put that in the show notes, everybody.
All right then.
So keep a lookout for show notes.
Good. Right, because I have that scientific side to me too. I want to see the data.
Yeah.
I'm not a scientific researcher per se. I don't sit down and like crunch numbers. I like following the intuitive piece and becoming more of the experiential engineer. Like, I bet that's going to go really well with that. And when we start stacking these therapies, we're stacking like meditation with floating, with psychedelics, with optimal nutrition, with inspired movement, with our conscious community. I don't really have a big desire to study one of those things. Let's
All
study
of
them all at the same time.
Maybe that's why we get along so well, because I started this crazy company that sells monkey face kettlebells, vitamins, protein powder,
Right.
deodorant,
Right.
like a little bit of everything.
Right? What are
'Cause
all
that's what it's all about.
factors?
It's holistic. It's about everything.
Right.
And as soon as you look myopically at one thing, that's when you start running into trouble. That's the old model that's a little bit broken. What's this one symptom? Okay, that symptom is a medical condition. We have the thing that'll fix that medical condition. Yes, it may create some other shit, but who cares about that? We got that symptom nailed. Nail, hammer, smash, except it's not a hammer. It's like a fucking nuclear bomb hammer. like, like using Thor's hammer to hang a fucking painting.
Thumbtack.
Yeah, exactly. You may take out the whole wall if you're not careful with the application of that.
I think one of the things that draws people so much to On It and to your message and to the experience here is that it's an invitation to live a more inspired life. Like, really, are we living our most optimized mindset? Yeah, we can always do things to get our body back into better shape. There's probably more of a clean diet to do. Maybe we could all use a little bit of a cleanse, blah, blah, blah. And are we in the midst of that experience super inspired by it? Are we living with the people that we really choose to express a celebration for life with? And that's also a celebration for death. And it's also being able to hold each other's hand when we're in the midst of crisis. And we just had somebody in the family have a really bad accident.
Yeah.
And he dodged a bullet, right? And I could tell that morning when we all found out, everything else went away. All the to-do list was gone. It was like, holy shit, one of our hermanos, one of our brothers, just missed a big life. It's gonna be a life-changing moment, but he dodged a big bullet that could have taken him out.
Yeah.
And so we get those reflections, and those are all great reflections. Like when my sister passed away a year and a half ago, her kind of legacy and mission message to me was, "Am I living my most inspired life?" And shortly after that, I changed a lot of things in my life. And it was really impactful. And that stayed with me since. Ceremony can do the same thing. Can you really get us intimate with what we're in alignment with and what's time to shift?
Amen to that. So I guess then the question to all of you listening here is, as the Lakota people say, they would always say this, Hoka Hey, today is a good day to die. Is today a good day for you to die? Is it? Like, if you were going to die today, would you walk out there with your head up, your chest out, say, today is a good day to die? And if it isn't, start working to that point so that every day that you can walk out there and have no regrets. And if you were called upon to go to battle, you'd be able to say, Hoka Hey, today is a good day to die.
Yeah.
All right.
Whew. Always gets good in this hood.
I mean, that's really what we're going for.
Totally.
Like no less than that.
No less than that, man. Everything else is secondary.
Yeah. Love you, brother.
So glad to be on this path with you, brother.
Yeah.
Para el bien de todos, till the very, very end.
The very fucking end. Much love, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. We will catch up with you soon. Hoka Hey.
Okay.